Hello, this is Anil Rajvanshi. I wrote a book exploring deep science in Patanjali Yoga Sutras last year. This book was made freely available on the net, and this recording will have the URL of the book, and I will appreciate if you can look and study this. This book elicited book is it's a booklet basically because it's a short 16-20 pages booklet, and so it elicited good response, and I thought of making it into an audio book, and so today I'm producing an audio book. The audio book is in two parts. The first part talks about Patanjali, a little bit about Patanjali, his book, and the deep science, and the second part is who was sage Patanjali, where did he come from, and other some other aspects. So this is a booklet on the deep science embedded in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. According to me, Patanjali was a true scientist who gave the first knowledge about the control of thought and mind and about the universal laws governing time and space. Unfortunately, till now, none of the commentaries on Yoga Sutras have explored them through the lens of science. I feel this booklet will help overcome that lacuna. Sage Patanjali has been my teacher. Whatever little I have written in the last 20 years on spirituality or thought about the interaction of mind and matter and higher things have been inspired by Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and I have always felt that his spirit has guided me in this journey. Yoga Sutras is basically a book of life or how to maximize your living potential. It also teaches a little bit about Hatha Yoga or the yoga exercises, but most important lesson it teaches in a scientific manner is how to make the mind or the instrument of comprehension very powerful so that it can comprehend any secrets of the universe, and then teaches on how to use this mind on different parts of body to get supernatural powers. Patanjali's writings are like an infinite ocean. The more you read them, the deeper is the knowledge. So this small booklet is a work in progress. I have been writing about the science of in Yoga Sutras for quite some time and have dealt about them cursorily in my two books, Nature of Human Thought and Exploring the Mind of God. In this booklet that you will read on the net, all the references are given in the booklet, and if you click the link, then you'll get different references. But this booklet is an attempt to explore it further and in depth. It is also surprising and fascinating that these sutras were written more than 2 to 3,000 years ago. The exact date is not known, and yet they present such scientifically advanced knowledge. One can only speculate that sage Patanjali was not of this world, but came from an advanced civilization to impart this knowledge. I have alluded to this aspect in this booklet. The booklet has following sections. Who was Patanjali? About his sutras or the book, and the science of sutras. This is a part one that I am going to um, uh, put it out as an audiobook. And in the part two, I'll talk about was Patanjali an extraterrestrial being? What did Patanjali write about the stars? And what are the major omissions in Patanjali Yoga Sutras? And the final section is about my teacher Sage Patanjali and how I learnt about him. This is not a book in the true sense, but a small booklet, and my desire to publish it through Amazon, it is available as a Kindle, is to make it available to a wide audience for discussions and debate. I have also made it freely available on the net, and the URL is narifulton.org/sutrascience.pdf, and I will appreciate if you go to the booklet site and click on this link. Since I believe knowledge should be freely available, and that is why I have made this available on the net. I will therefore greatly appreciate if you can comment on this booklet either on the Amazon book site or can send an email to me, and my email is anilrajvanshi50 at gmail.com. So, who was sage Patanjali? We do not know who Patanjali was or when he wrote the sutras or even what we have today are really his sutras, but reading between the lines or extracting knowledge from them shows the great understanding and sparkling wisdom of his science. Though we will never know the truth of his existence, but his science based teachings or sutras, which were written more than 2000 to 3000 years ago, meant it must have come from a person not of this world. I therefore feel that he may have been an astronaut from an advanced civilization who came to this world to impart great scientific knowledge. This speculation is explored further in this booklet. Thus, whether it is a definition of time, or how thought can be controlled, or how a powerful mind can be used to discover the secrets of nature, all can be gleaned from his writings and by reading between the lines. Yoga Sutras are not easy to read. They are precise and crisp. India has had a long tradition of passing knowledge from guru to disciple through oral transmission. It can be conjectured that the initial exposition by Patanjali must have been a very detailed one, since the subject matter was difficult. With time, the subsequent commentators made them crisp, since it helped them in memorizing the sutras, and in that process, it is quite possible that some important information in sutras may have been lost or changed and substituted by some authors with their limited understanding of the subject. Another possibility is that when people did not understand the science behind these sutras, some important ones may have been omitted. Thus, one needs to read between the lines with a deep knowledge of modern science to fully appreciate their message. I will try to explain this in detail in the sections below. First of all, let me tell you about the book or the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. The book that we have today uh, in front of us, and we do not know when it became in the came in the written form, is divided into four sections with a total of 195 sutras. Section 1, which is called Samadhi Path, contains 51 sutras. Sutras are nothing else but the small Sanskrit, uh, you can say, uh, short Sanskrit things about explaining. Section 2, which is Sadhana Path, has 55 sutras. Section 3, which is called as the Vibhuti Path, contains 56 sutras. And the last section, which is section 4, called Kaivalya Path, has 33 sutras. The first two sections, which are Samadhi and Sadhana, talk about how to make the mind and body powerful enough so that one can focus on a single thought for a long time. This focus then leads to Sanyam. And Patanjali defines Sanyam as a combination of focus, contemplation, and Samadhi. Sanyam done on any subject or object leads to its complete knowledge. The state of Samadhi is reached when the object of the focus vanishes and one gets immersed in its essence. To me, this is essentially spirituality. The third section, which is called as the Vibhuti Path, Vibhuti means powers, is the main section of Yoga Sutras where the science of yoga is fully developed. In this section, Patanjali talks of using Sanyam on various parts of the body to get supernatural powers and on various celestial subjects to understand the laws of nature and the universe. I feel Vibhutipad is the real essence of his teachings on the conquest of nature via technology. This section has also inspired me to go into the journey of discovering the interplay of spirituality and technology, about which I have written extensively. Since this section is the meat of sutras, I have a feeling that through time it has been tinkered by various commentators. Commentators who did not understand the science either changed some sutras or may have even omitted some of the deep ones, and surprisingly, quite a number of distinguished commentators, including Swami Vivekananda, have simply glossed over them. Probably they did not understand the deep science in these sutras. In depth reading of Vibhutipad also reveals that some sutras were missing in this section, since there is an abrupt change in the subject matter from one sutra to another, and besides, at some places they are arranged in a haphazard manner. And the last or the fourth section of the book, Kevalipad, which means getting enlightenment or the getting out of the cycle of the birth and death, talks about how using these supernatural powers and by understanding the universal laws, a yogi gains liberation from the cycle of birth and death and can leave the earth's gravity field. One of the most important tenets of Indian philosophical system is the liberation of soul, atma, etc. from the cycle of birth and death, and Patanjali shows in this section on how to achieve it. It is also interesting to note that there is no reference to God in the sutras, but only of universal consciousness. In fact, he talks about universal consciousness only in 7 out of 195 sutras. Patanjali defines this universal consciousness as an entity called Ishwar, section 1.23, which he says is beyond time, and identifies it through section 1.27 with the original sound pranav. Modern theories of Big Bang suggest that the first signal after birth of universe was a sound which was like a deep hum. So it's really amazing how Patanjali defines some of these things in just like how a modern scientist would define the beginning of universe and what are the physical laws which produced this universe. Strangely, reading these sutras somehow are mandatory for practitioners of Hatha Yoga or the yoga exercises. However, I feel that the study of Yoga Sutras has nothing to do with the practicing of physical yoga exercises or Hatha Yoga. Patanjali only talks about physical exercise and pranayam in about 5 to 6 sutras out of 195. Rest of the sutras are all about how to control the mind, what you can do to achieve that process, and how to make this body very powerful, and so that you can achieve supernatural powers. And to my mind, all this is extremely scientific and written in a manner that anybody can practice this and achieve those things. Thus, Yoga Sutras should be a recommended reading for students of psychology and all physical sciences. It is a remarkable document on how to live a good and emotionally satisfying life, and therefore should be a recommended reading in any humanities course. Now I will talk about the science in Yoga Sutras and will attempt to show the deep science embedded in them. This is based upon my limited understanding of them and is speculative in nature. However, it shows that if we approach each sutra from a scientific point of view, then its gem becomes evident. For example, in section 3, 3 means Vibhutipad, 53 to 55 sutras, Patanjali says, by making sanyam on a single moment and on the sequence of moments, a yogi gets vivek or exalted knowledge so that she can comprehend all objects in the universe simultaneously, irrespective of their location and sequence of change. Or, in other words, the mind of God. And according to John Wheeler, who was one of the world's foremost experts on relativity, Einstein's theory of gravitation can simply be stated as events, and the interval between events builds space-time. The geometric nature of space-time gives rise to gravity, tells the mass how to move, and is the basis of universe and the movement of all heavenly bodies. It is really amazing how close what Patanjali wrote 3000 years ago comes to what Einstein wrote in early 1900. Again in Vibhutipad, section 3.31, Patanjali says that by doing Sanyam on the hollow of throat, one conquers hunger and thirst. Recently, scientists have discovered that by stimulation of vagus nerve, hunger pangs can be suppressed. Vagus nerve is a communication highway of the body because it connects all different parts of body to the brain and is concentrated near the esophagus tube, which is close to the hollow of throat. And few years ago, US Food and Drug Administration or US FDA approved a device which can electrically stimulate the vagus nerve so that the brain gets a signal that the stomach is full. It is really amazing how not only Einstein talked about the universe, about space time, but he also had a great understanding of the human body. And so his whole, all the sutras, in fact, I am not sure that whether all the sutras are still intact. And so he must have had described the human body in much greater detail on what can be achieved. Similarly, in section 3.43, Patanjali says that by doing Sanyam on the relationship of body and space, and he calls space as Akash, a body could be dissolved cellularly or becomes light as a cotton fibers and transported from one place to another. This is a really remarkable sutra, and this results in the conquest of space and galactic travel. Now, in the present day, almost all the UFO or unidentified object abductees, the people who are taken to UFOs, they have said about their experiences of getting their bodies transported from their home to the alien spacecraft via tunneling and cellular transfer through walls and glass windows. This experience of these abductees follows so closely what Patanjali wrote, and probably this is a mechanism about which we do not understand yet, shows how body could be disintegrated at one place and again assembled, just like what we do when we print throughout the computers any information sent across the globe and printed in your printer. So this is almost like that. Interestingly, in section 3.40 of Vibhutipad, Patanjali also talks about how doing sanyam on the vital currents of body, a yogi masters the art of floating over water, mud, or thorns without touching them. Superficially, these two sutras, Sutra 40 and 43, talk about talks about transporting a body through space or anti-gravity process. And yet there is a difference. It can be conjectured that Patanjali may be alluding that floating over water, etc., could be done via magnetic levitation, while section 3.43 talks about getting away from Earth's gravity for intergalactic space travel via tunneling and cellular transfer. Again, the experiences of the abductees have shown how aliens floated over land and other surfaces, and this could be the possibility that Patanjali showed. This magnetic levitation could be possible if by some mechanism we can make the body a room temperature superconductor so that it could be levitated magnetically in the Earth's magnetic field. Presently, the world does not have this technology. In another sutra, section 3.21, Patanjali says that doing sanyam on body shape and its changes so that the reflected light does not reach the eyes of beholder, one can make the body invisible. This process is used in stealth aircraft where sharp angles and the absorption of visible spectrum by the aircraft body makes it invisible. And similarly in section 3.35 of Vibhuti Patanjali talks about how doing sanyam on heart gives complete knowledge of the consciousness. Recent scientific discoveries have shown a close connection between the heart and the mind. And all the references I put it in the essay, and one can go and look at the links and see how these things pan out. Similarly, he talks about how a yogi can read the other person's mind by doing sanyam on his thought structure and also control it. Sutra 3.19. This is being slowly perfected through the various process of artificial intelligence and hypnosis and could be explained by a quantum entanglement of thought, which I have written recently in my new book called What is Thought. So it is possible, and this, what I have described in my new book, What is Thought, follows the science of modern physics and quantum physics very closely. And it is unbelievable that Patanjali, who wrote about these things almost 3000 years ago. And in another sutra in Kevalipad, which is the last section, section 4.1, Patanjali talks about how all the supernatural powers can come to a yogi by taking drugs. Recent studies on the effect of recreational and mind altering drugs like LSD, etc., have shown that enhance spiritual experiences for drug takers and for some experience of entity visitation. To my mind, this discussion on mind altering drugs in Yoga Sutras is the first such anywhere in the ancient spiritual texts. Also in Kevalipad, sections 4.23 and 9, Patanjali talks about the rebirth happening by chance and not because of past karma. This, to my mind, is a major departure from the accepted notion that your birth is dictated by past karma. And I believe that this comes closest to the modern scientific explanation that if there is a reincarnation, it is purely by chance. Even some sutras in Samadhi and Sadhana Path, which is section 1 and 2 of the book, where Patanjali details the mechanism of thought control and Sanyam, if we examine them through the lens of modern day neuroscience and brain research, then the gems of his teachings become even brighter. Thus, in his sutras on memory formation and removal, Patanjali calls memory as sanskars, and the nature of human thought tallies closely with what we know today about the production and nature of human thought. Similarly, Patanjali talks about the existence of reality as independent of its perception by the observer, section 4.16 and 17. And this is exactly what Einstein stated during his dialogue with Rabindranath Tagore in 1930. Tagore kept on saying that without the knower, the reality does not exist. And Einstein said that reality exists irrespective whether somebody is there to observe or not. An interesting feature of sutras is that Patanjali understood that the human body is an extremely complex machine, and by understanding it thoroughly and by doing sanyam on its various parts, or in other words, tuning it, can produce supernatural powers. In doing this, Patanjali showed in those ancient times the power of biomimicry or copy the nature, a modern design strategy for developing technologies. I think a whole book can be written about the relevance of sutras to modern science and technology. So there is a need to study them thoroughly since many secrets still need to be rediscovered. My desire of comparing Patanjali Sutras with modern science is neither to glorify our ancient tradition nor to belittle the modern science. Both are important in their own way, but to show that all great knowledge originates from the same knowledge space, irrespective of the person and the time of its discovery. The knowledge exists, and a mind which is very powerful, and which is what Patanjali is trying to show in his Yoga Sutras, can discover that knowledge. Also, this comparison helps establish the value and authenticity of the scientific aspect of sutras and give credence to the fact that other sutras may hold secrets which could be revealed if studied thoroughly. This revelation may perhaps show the path to a new understanding of natural laws and novel inventions, and is the main reason why we are trying to read between the lines in these ancient texts. So, this is the end of part one of this audio book. This is part two of the audio book titled Deep Exploring Deep Science in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. In the part one, we talked about uh, who was Sage Patanjali, the book, and the deep science embedded in sutras. In the second part, I am going to first discuss, was Sage Patanjali an extraterrestrial astronaut? Since we discussed that he wrote some of these things which are almost 3000 years ago, which really jive so well with the modern science and technology. All the supernatural powers described in Vibhuti have uncanny resemblance with those exhibited by aliens, and hence one can speculate that probably Patanjali was also an alien astronaut. In the seminal book on extraterrestrial abductions of humans by UFO inhabitants, John Mack, a former professor of Harvard University, had shown, and he wrote a book called Abduction, a very famous book, had shown that all the persons abducted and taken inside the spaceships, and they were called as the abductees, talked about extraterrestrials floating in air, could interact telepathically with them, could read their minds and modify them, become invisible, and exhibited almost all the powers written in Vibhutipad of Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Similar experiences of abductees have also been reported by Coral and Jim Lorenzen in their book Encounters with UFO Occupants, and so many others who have experienced this UFO phenomena have written a similar type of things, irrespective of which country they are and where the UFOs interacted with them. This similarity between the powers written in Yoga Sutras and exhibited by extraterrestrials is so uncanny that I sometimes think that sage Patanjali could have been an extraterrestrial being who came to Earth almost 2500 to 3000 years ago to give us this knowledge. In fact, Patanjali alludes to extraterrestrials in his Vibhutipad, section 3.52, when he says that a yogi, when approached by celestial beings, should neither be surprised nor get attached to them because they are hindrance to his salvation. Interestingly, this sutra is at the end of Vibhuti path, so that the yogi is supposed to have acquired nearly all the powers attributed to extraterrestrials or the superpowers. Thus, he or she should interact as equals with them and ward off their influence rather than being overwhelmed by their powers, as most abductees have described about these encounters. It is also interesting that this sutra has been commented by almost all commentators as something that they are the interaction with fairies and gods and etc. and all clothed in mythology. But I feel that what Patanjali tried to show was these um, aliens and extraterrestrial beings who came from different parts of the universe. Thus, if we understand how a yogi can get these supernatural powers and understands space, time, and universal laws, then it may show us a possible way to understand mind matter interaction and probably pave the way for developing galactic travel technologies. And unidentified flying objects or UFOs are real. There have been innumerable sightings and visitations by extraterrestrials throughout the history of mankind. In Indian scriptures like Ramayana and Mahabharata, there are quite a few descriptions of various gods visiting Earth in their flying machines. And recently, US government has officially released video clippings of a few of these sightings. Similarly, a recent series of Netflix documentaries has further shown the possibilities of these visitations and mankind's quest for understanding the technologies of UFO propulsion. Propulsion technology used by UFOs effortlessly overcomes Earth's gravitational pull, and understanding it may help us produce unlimited renewable energy on this planet for our needs and benefits. Hence, it is necessary that we invest money and resources in discovering and understanding them. I firmly believe that the future of mankind is to become a galactic traveling civilization, and mastering the technology to do so can only come when we develop the wisdom through spirituality to use it wisely. And I have written quite a lot on this subject, and there is a link to these articles in the booklet. I will also talk now about Patanjali and the stars. Another tantalizing indication of why Patanjali was an astronaut comes from the fact that in three short sutras, section 3, 27 to 29, he talks about the stars. One can ask that in a book about mind control and yoga, what is the relevance of the knowledge of stars? It can only be conjectured that since Patanjali was an astronaut, the knowledge of stars was necessary for intergalactic space travel. Besides, he also explained that the knowledge of space and time could be obtained by understanding the sun, moon, and polar stars. For example, in Vibhuti section 3.27, Patanjali has written that doing Sanyam on sun, one obtains knowledge of universe, celestial spaces, or Akash. This is an interesting concept since understanding of Akash or celestial space using sun is far removed from its life-giving rays which comes in various frequencies and colors. Besides, the sun also emits other cosmic rays and particles. We can only conjecture that perhaps Patanjali wanted to show that the knowledge of sun and how it produces energy may tell us something or everything about atomic energy, plasma physics, gravity, and other deep science of the universe. It can also be conjectured that by Akash he may have meant space-time continuum or gravity since it is all pervasive. The Sayam done on Sun, the greatest gravity source in our solar system, may help us in understanding space-time continuum or the nature of gravity. This is also detailed in Sutras 3:53 to 55. He also talks about Moon, section 3.28, and says that by doing Sanyam on a moon, a yogi gets knowledge of the arrangement of planets. Newton discovered gravity by thinking how moon goes around the earth, and the falling apple from the tree gave him the idea of gravity and about the motion of planets. Similarly, Patanjali talks about pole star, section 3.29, and says that as Sayam on it, will help a yogi understand the movement of all stars and planets. Pole stars through ages have been used not only for navigation on this planet Earth but also to map the skies. For understanding universe and intergalactic space, I feel there must have been more sutras about other celestial objects, but they are missing from the book. It is also remarkable that in three short sutras, Patanjali talks about universe or celestial space and movement of planets, and this was much before the time of Copernicus, Plato, Socrates, and Newton. However, there are major omissions in Yoga Sutras, and one of the glaring omissions in Yoga Sutra is that there is no mention about Kundalini Yoga. Kundalini Yoga is an important part of Tantric Yoga system, where yogis believe that through the extremely small central canal called Shushma Nadi of spinal cord, sexual chemicals from the base of this cord can be raised to reach the brain where they enhance the communication of neural pathways so that all the parts of the brain work in unison and one can attain samadhi. This is similar to what takes place in the brain during the LSD episode, though the user taking the drugs has no control over his or her experiences. Yogis also believe that sexual energy is coiled at the base of spine, hence the name of Kundalini, coiled energy, snake, etc. They believe it can be raised in central canal, also called Sushmanadi by will. It seems little strange that sage Patanjali, who was the first to enunciate the yoga principles of thought control and mind enhancement, would not have included the science of Kundalini Yoga in it or did not know about the Kundalini Yoga. There could be two reasons for such an omission, and we can only speculate. One could be that Patanjali did not believe in Kundalini Yoga as a real physical phenomena. Even today, we do not know whether something like this exists because the communication transfer inside the body is through the vagus nerve, and so the spine and all the nerve centers of the spine only get their information from the um, uh, body and through our senses. And so it is possible that Patanjali did not believe in that. And the other speculation could be that probably that section could have been extracted if he believed and found something about it by some commentators from his sutras and made into a separate science of Tantric Yoga. After all, the whole of Vibhuti path is Tantra, or a technique of getting supernatural powers, and description of Kundalini Yoga could have been very appropriate in it. This is just a speculation, and so we leave it at that. Now I finally come to my last section, and I'll talk about my teacher, Sage Patanjali. As I have written before, I have been greatly inspired by Patanjali Sutras and have felt his spirit has guided me in my quest for spirituality. Hence, I would like to briefly write about my teacher. Obviously, I never met or knew Patanjali, but I knew him through his Yoga Sutras. Just like the famous Eklavya in Mahabharata, who learnt his archery by practicing in front of the statue of Dronacharya, I have learned about the science of yoga by imagining that the spirit of Patanjali is guiding me. A great teacher is one who allows his disciple to go through the rough and tumble of learning process, but his guiding hand is always available to show the correct path. So many times when I have been in doubt, I have repeatedly gone to Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and discovered the hidden gems. I guess all great books are teachers in this sense. I came to know Patanjali at the age of 14 when I read his Yoga Sutras and the time when I started practicing spirituality in depth and in great detail. And this Yoga Sutras was I was introduced through a book uh, is written by I.K. Taimani, The Science of Yoga. This was borrowed from a public library in Lucknow. Yoga Sutras is a very difficult book to read, and more so since most of the commentators have explained the great science of thought and mind control in an extremely confusing way because they did not understand it. And this was because most of them had no knowledge of science of mind control, hence their explanations were all clothed in mythology. A great teacher sometimes has a maximum impact when the student is very sharp. A disciple elicits information from the teacher depending upon his or her intelligence. A great teacher, therefore, is like an ocean of knowledge, but you can only take the amount of knowledge depending upon the size of your container or the brain power. At the age 14, when I was first introduced to my teacher Patanjali, I could hardly understand what he meant, but understood that by following his teachings, one could get superhuman powers like flying, omniscience, mind reading, and energy of a thunderbolt for one's body, among others. Now, which 14-year-old boy does not want such powers? So I read it, hardly understood it. Then got sidetracked by my technology education in IIT Kanpur from 67 to 74 and my studies in the United States, which were from 74 to 81. And then I came back to Fulton to do my rural development in this NGO called Nimkar Agriculture Institute from 81 onwards. However, his teachings must have remained at the back of my mind, and they exerted an invisible pull. So when the time was ripe, I again went back to him for knowledge and discovered the tremendous gems about which I have written in this booklet and about which this audio book has been made. Since then, every time I have doubts about some aspects of science of mind or spirituality, I have gone to Patanjali's sutras and have discovered new gems. With time, my container has also expanded a little bit, and thus I can absorb more of his knowledge. Thus, what I have shown in this short booklet is a tip of iceberg as regards the wisdom and genius of sage Patanjali. What is needed further is to trace the history and origins of his sutras so that a comprehensive system of it is established and to study in depth his available sutras through the lens of modern science and technology. Thank you very much, and this concludes the second part of my booklet exploring the deep science in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. The last section is reference suggested readings, which are basically books, and I would urge the listeners and the readers to go through this booklet on the net and try to see what I have tried to explain. Thank you very much.